open a public hearing on House Bill 2216, Foster Children Sibling Bill of Rights, and invite up Representative Susan McLean.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning, committee, and thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciate you allowing us to go first on the Foster Bill of Rights, which is House Bill 2216. And I'm here basically as a teacher, 42 years. And during my career as a teacher, a high school teacher, there were many foster students who came through my classrooms. And these were students that were really very, very, I guess I would say it sometimes during the program that they were going through and the experiences they were going through, they really needed support. They needed a stable family, and one of the ways that they can have that stable family besides foster parenting and the foster family is through having a connection with their siblings. And I don't think anyone can deny the connection between siblings and how important and how strong that connection really is. That connection and that support and that encouragement that the foster youth can get through having that connection with their siblings is really, really important. Our foster system and values should be more geared to providing that family and the family members and siblings with a proactive, a very safe, and a connected plan that works for each sibling. During the time of upheaval, that connection with a brother or a sister is the only constant relationship they have in a sea of changes. And in House Bill 2216, with the amendments, it goes a long way to making this possible. The Sibling Bill of Rights provides knowledge, and it provides them an opportunity to have input, and it gives a very stable and a very safe individualized plan that suits each one of the siblings in the group. And it gives them an opportunity for a family relationship to flourish under the foster youth placement. I really am in favor of this. I had 4 youth who came in to talk to me the other day, and they were absolutely fabulous. They were proactive. They really laid out exactly what this particular Bill of Rights can really do for them. And this is a bill that I think is really going to provide a structure and a framework for us to support them. They're supporting themselves by coming and letting us know exactly what they need. And I think we should get out of their way and let them do it. So thank you very much. And I know you're going to hear from some fine people today that have worked really hard on this Bill of Rights. And I really support it, and I hope you can too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. We're going to have a lot of speakers on this. If you have questions, you might want to hold off, but if there's anything burning just for her.
Oh, I have one.
Chance? Go
Madam
ahead.
Chair.
Yeah.
Is your colleague going to testify?
You know what? I hear Senator Gelser is going to explain this to you, but that is also a bill that I have a lot of support for, and I hope you'll take that one very, very seriously as well, because I think you've got some opportunities to be really proactive and really supportive of families and young people today.
Great.
So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Representative Gelser. We are going to suspend the hearing on House Bill 2216, and we'll suspend this one, and then we will open House Bill 2216, Foster Children Siblings Bill of Rights.
Wonderful. And may my friend the bear stay for this one. Stay right here. I actually pushed him over. I'm a terrible friend.
Might be here for the whole hearing.
That will teach you all to sit next to me. So, for your record, my name is still Sarah Gelser. I still represent Corvallis, Philomath, and Albany. Thank you again for opening this bill. The Siblings Bill of Rights is extraordinary for a number of reasons. The most important being this is a concept that comes to us from foster youth themselves. And as we all wrestle with the issues in our child safety and child welfare system, what I think is important to remember is the true experts in this, the people that have the biggest stake in this, are the youth themselves who live and work through this system. And as I've had the real privilege to get to know a number of foster youth over the last several years, one of the key issues that people raise is the importance of family connection, and especially those connections to a brother or a sister. If you think about your own brother or sister, if you have them, I'm fortunate to have 3 younger brothers that I can't imagine not having in my life. Those are the people that I share a history with. We share their experiences. If you imagine that, the traumas that we have shared that don't compare to the traumas that some of these kids have shared, that is just the basis of security. I know there's one foster youth that I've been working with for the last couple years. She and I speak regularly, and the biggest fear that she has is that her brother right now is in the process of being adopted. And she has been told, and we're working to resolve this, that once that adoption is finalized, because that family is not adopting her, that she may not have the opportunity to have a relationship or have any contact with her brother again. That is a devastating thing. That is not fair to her. That is not fair to her brother. That is played out over and over again, sometimes not by intention. It's by a matter of practicality. But the elements of this bill really speak to the importance of that relationship, of keeping the experience and the wellness of children and youth at the center of the work that we do. I know that there are some technical questions around the language about mandating and ensuring the ongoing contact between siblings if they are adopted through different families. I would urge you that that is an incredibly important element of the bill. There has to be a way to get there. I'm an adoptive parent. We participate in an open adoption. We have ongoing contact with birth parents and birth grandparents and now younger birth siblings. That is a magical and rich part of our lives. If we could make sure that that is something that is available to children and youth that go to their forever families through the foster care system as well, that is one of the most important things that I think that we can do for young people. Family is a big thing. No one can have too many people to love them, and everyone deserves to remain in contact with their brother or sister. So I urge you to listen to these youth and move this bill forward. I hope we get to see it in the Senate before too long.
That's great. Any questions for Senator Gelser? I know you've got a committee meeting coming up too. So thank you so much
Thank
for
you
all
very
your work
much.
in this area.
Thank you, and nice work.
Bye.
So much.
Great. Okay, so we currently have open House Bill 2216. I want to give you a sense of the order because it's not going to follow the order on the agenda here. We're going to continue on 2216 and open it up for public testimony. Then we will go back to 2221. Child abuse medical assessments. Then we'll go to 2344, qualifications and requirements for minors in independent living programs. Then 2401, trauma-informed training for child welfare personnel. And then House Bill 2500, continuing education for caseworkers on juvenile dependency proceedings. And we will now go back to a regular order and ask our committee analyst, Cassie, to please read the summary of the Foster Children Sibling Bill of Rights.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 2216 establishes specified rights for foster children. The bill directs Department of Human Services to adopt rules establishing the Oregon Foster Children's Sibling Bill of Rights. It also directs DHS to review the rules periodically and promote participation of current and former foster children in developing the rules.
Thank you. And Representative Peluso, as a co-chief sponsor, would you like to come up and introduce?
I would like to close.
Oh, great.
So if
Fantastic.
someone else could do that, I would appreciate
Okay,
it.
perfect. Then we've got youth from the Oregon Foster Youth Connection here to testify. So please come on up. Lupe, Alexis, and Dano. Please state your name for the record.
For the record, my name is Lupe Rankin. Hello, Chair Kenny Geyer and members of the committee. Thank you for having us today. We'd like to start out with sharing a bit about Oregon Foster Youth Connections, the program of Children First for Oregon we are representing today. OFYC is a statewide youth-led group of current and former foster youth who aim to improve Oregon's foster system through advocacy, activism, and leadership. Currently, OFYC consists of 3 chapters: Lane County, Marion, and Polk County, Tri-County, with potential growth of chapters in Central and Southern Oregon. OFYC has been involved in passing of 5 prior bills as well as 1 Senate bill. So, how the bill came to be about: the concept of HB 2216, Sibling Bill of Rights, blossomed at OFIC's 2016 policy conference, where 31 current and former foster youth dove into the tough problems DHS caseworkers, foster youth, and foster parents are experiencing in Oregon at this time. On July 19th of 2016, many of us presented multiple recommendations to audiences of lawmakers, administrators, and service providers. Of the 7 policy suggestions, OFIC members chose sibling connections as a top priority to bring forward to legislators this legislative session.
Great, thank you.
Honorable Chair Kenny Geyer, Vice Chair Sanchez, and Vice Chair Stark, thank you for having us today. My name is Daniel Menino. I am 23 years old, and I am a former foster youth from Jackson County. And I am also a member of Oregon Foster Youth Connection. And I'd like to share a little bit about my story today. I was in foster care and temporary guardianship between the ages of 8 and 14, separated from my older sibling. Prior to my placement, my sister was my greatest companion and support through a time of abuse and neglect from our biological parents. Amidst the turmoil of poverty, repeated lice infestations, and witnessing domestic violence and my parents' severe mental illness, my sister helped me feel like life was worth living and that something positive could come out of our situation. After my parents' divorce, around the time my sister was 13, she had stayed with a church friend and his parents temporarily while my mother was in the hospital and respite for a psychotic break. They didn't have room for me, and as I bounced around from various friends' parents around the neighborhood, while we waited for my mother to be discharged, I was placed in the system. My sister's friends' parents became foster parents to continue her care, and I was placed an hour away by DHS. My sister was told she could move in where I was living. However, she would have to leave her teachers and friends at the school she had finally gotten settled into, and her church youth group, which was one of her most important support systems besides me. She felt that her life was being completely torn apart and that the adults who were in her life were pressuring her into a certain direction, which was to stay where she was already placed. In the 2 years that followed, my foster parents frequently spoke about my sister's religion, as well as her weight in a derogatory manner, and I didn't feel that they were supporting my relationship with my sister. When my mother had finished her parenting classes after many supervised visits, I was placed with my mother again. My sister remained with her foster family as she was old enough to age out with them with a parental signature, which my mom signed. Less than a year into living with my mother, I called up my former foster parents and begged them to take me back, and surprisingly they did under temporary guardianship. During that time, I was 10 to 14, and visits with my sister were not made a priority. When my sister was 16 years old, I remember her driving to see me on the weekend, even though she was petrified of getting onto the freeway to spend time playing cards with me. When my temporary guardians chose not to adopt me in my early teens, they returned me to my birth mother, who I lived with until I was 17. Not only was I struggling with feeling rejected, I was struggling with high school because I had, moved schools so many times, being bullied for being bisexual and gender nonconforming, and struggling to keep up with the coursework. I was also struggling with my own mental health, as I have generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and bipolar type 2. Only one of those diagnoses was diagnosed at the time, and I also was not in therapy or on medication. I was at risk for developing addiction, self-harm, and suicidal behaviors. In retrospect, I realized a lot of the coping skills I did acquire in my avoidance of those were also not positive. My sister was able to help me find independent housing and get ready to test for my GED. Around the time I was 17, I moved out from where I was with my mom. Over time, I've been able to begin the mental health care I need. I consider myself a youth that sort of fell through the cracks, and without my sibling finally being accessible, I'm not sure I would be alive today. Being able to reconnect as adults with my sibling and making up for lost time as best we could was an opportunity that most siblings who get separated in care are not afforded. Had a bill like HB 2216 existed back then, I believe DHS could have been encouraged to help my sister and I get a placement together that worked for us both, or at least placements in closer proximity to each other. Had it been decided our respective separate placements were still the best choice for us, which may have been the case, A bill like HB 2216 would have encouraged our caseworkers and respective foster parents to coordinate more frequent and better quality visitations for us both. In addition, transportation assistance could have been provided so my sister wouldn't have to drive on the freeway as a new driver. Had a sibling bill of rights been posted in my foster home, I would have known I could speak out about how I felt I wasn't being given the support and seeing my sibling that I really wanted and needed. Lastly, I would have been able to understand more clearly why my sister and I were in separate homes and whether she was being adopted by her long-term foster parents instead of returning home with me to our biological home. I hope that with your support in the passing of HB 2216, foster youth in Jackson County and other counties throughout Oregon will be able to have a better experience in care in relation to their siblings than I had. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for sharing your story.
Chair Kenny Geyer, Vice Chair Representative Stark, Vice Chair Representative Sanchez. For the record, my name is Alexis Basca, and I'd like to thank you for having us here today. I'm 20 years old, and I currently live in Washington County. When I entered the foster care system, I was 15. I was a freshman in high school, which is already about as tough as it gets. But my father had just passed away. I was separated from my mother, and the hardest part was being separated from my siblings. So I am the oldest of my father's 3 daughters, and something that was always driven into my head was, all right, you're the oldest, like you need to watch out for your little sisters, you need to protect them, and most importantly, be a role model to them, which was something that I worked hard to do. Their mom wasn't super involved in their life. We have separate mothers, they're my half-siblings. So I took over that role. I taught them how to do their hair, I painted their nails, things like that, until I was separated from them. So I had a very maternal instinct with my siblings, which was very hard to be in that role and then have no contact with them. Not only was I dealing with the loss of our father and no contact with my mom, but I was worried about my sisters. I was like, okay, well, what are they doing? Are they okay? Are they safe? Because I was placed in the foster care system and they were placed into guardianship with a relative that I don't have contact with. It was tough. All I wanted was to see my sisters. I would ask the court, I'd ask the judge, my lawyer, my caseworker, is there any way that I can get in contact with my sisters? Can I have meetings, phone calls, anything? And because they were in guardianship and I was in foster care, there was nothing that they could do. I'd always wished that something like this had existed. I think that keeping in contact with my siblings would have helped reduce the trauma, anxiety, and depression that I endured. In House Bill 2216, siblings will be given the right to an adoption placement where sibling contact is encouraged. In the current draft of our first amendment, which I will share in a moment, there's just joking. There should be a conversation with prospective guardians or adoptive parents on how important maintaining sibling contact is, something that would help my case. I think that if I would have had somebody to reach out to the guardians of my sisters to say, you know, how beneficial it is, that the possibility of me having contact with them would have been greater. Now I'm working to rebuild a connection with my sisters, but it's hard because you've known someone from birth. I can remember my first sister being born, going to the hospital, freaked out. I was like, what's going on? And then to know everything about them and 5 years later, them be strangers to you. I couldn't tell you my sister's favorite color. I could tell you when she was 6, but now it's difficult. It's interesting to be in that role. Some of the amendments, unofficial amendments, might I add, to our bill are to include the definition of siblings as as already in statute, to have rights explained to each sibling and valuable for them to read, available, just joking, available for them to read, to have rights as safe and appropriate for each individual sibling, to have a safe and appropriate conversation if siblings cannot be placed together or have limited contact, to have siblings involved in the creation of the sibling contact plan, to have the sibling contact plan reviewed regularly, to ensure siblings have these rights even if their parents' rights are terminated, to have caseworkers educated in the importance of sibling relationships in addition to foster parents, and as I had mentioned previously, to remove the mandated relationship after adoption, but to ensure conversation about the importance of sibling relationships in adoption and guardianship plans.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Questions? Representative Gorsuch.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's more of a comment than a question. You're all wonderful presenters, and you should be very proud of what you've done today. It's very impressive, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gorsuch.
Representative Sanchez.
Thank you, Chair. Lupe, can you give me an idea of some of the other things that you all, I mean, I know that there were, I was there, but I know that there were other things on your agenda, and I just want to give people an idea of some other bills that might be coming at them soon, because I think it's really, really important, and you all are the best people to represent the work that you need done in the future. So, yeah, there you go. Got the list.
All right, so I was actually Chair Kenny Geyer, Vice Chair Representative Stark, Vice Chair Representative Sanchez. So, as mentioned, we all got together at a policy conference to come up with the ideas that we wanted. We had come up with 7 policy recommendations. The first one was long-term connections. Which I'm going to scare you all. I'm going to talk about permanency. People are foster youth are being put in unwanted permanent situations, permanency plans. And it's not that we don't want permanency in our life. It's just that for me, when I entered, I was 15 years old, and I already knew who my mother and father were, and the idea of guardianship frightened me, terrified me, and I was placed in kinship care. Granted, they were relatives that I wasn't close with, but the idea of not having the support and the safety net of the foster care system behind me in DHS was terrifying. What if something went wrong? What if it didn't work out? So having the safety net of DHS was huge. I had a lawyer, I had a judge, I had a caseworker, the foster care ombudsman. So to have those resources, it makes you feel more secure. It's not that we don't want a forever family or permanency. It's just that it's terrifying, especially at the rate that they're trying to place people into permanent situations. In my opinion, you do not know who your forever family is in 6 months, which... How can you? How can you truly know someone in 6 months or 3 months or even a year? So it's just, we didn't like that. We wanted to have more say in it. As one of the policy recommendations was the Sibling Bill of Rights that we took to legislation. We also have quality of foster homes. So one of them was youth were experiencing mistreatment simply because the foster parent or caseworker did not understand how to properly handle conflict, which resulted in mentally and emotionally unstable home for the youth. So our recommendation was mandatory DHS training and collaborative problem solving should be added to foster parents and caseworkers. Another one was youth in care often feel left out because they're unsure of where they stand in the house, such as could be, well, your bedtime is this time, or curfew is this, open fridge. They just weren't, it wasn't a clear set of the expectations of the house, or the case plan, things such as that. So our policy recommendation was to improve first contact communication process. DHS should make it mandatory to meet with everyone involved in the case, such as the attorney, the caseworker, foster parent, the youth, within the first 5 days to go over home expectations, youth expectations to get to know each other in the new home. Another one we have is a lack of thoroughness in the background check, screening process, and home visits was negatively impacted to the quality of the foster homes. So we recommended that DHS implement the SAFE model for background checks in the screening process, as well as mandating monthly home visits using a physical checklist instead of just saying, okay, well, I checked, to have them check it off as they actually had to go through the effort. Another one was supporting youth who are in care between the ages of 18 and 21. So there aren't enough DHS caseworkers and care providers who support and acknowledge towards the LGBTQ plus community within state care. So our policy recommendation is that DHS support LGBTQ youth to feel safe and able to open up to their care providers without religion and judgment being obstacles. LGBTQ youth should have access to resources and be supported in seeking out those resources. And lastly, our 7th policy recommendation is a lack of transition-oriented discussion of activities during the 30-day visitations. So our policy recommendation would be DHS create specialized training in caseworkers geared towards youth 18 to 21. DHS offer those specialized workers to help youth ages 18 to 21 transfer to adulthood. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I want to say something, and then I know
and I think
go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Kenny Geyer. So again, similar to Representative Gorsuch, more of a comment than a question. I very much appreciate the work you guys have done on this, and I appreciate how responsive you've been to, just small detail changes, and we've talked about a number of things. And one of them that you've already mentioned, the mandated ongoing involvement after post-adoption, as important as that contact is, there's a handful of really messy situations that make that really difficult. So I appreciate the change of wording that you guys have done that to really help facilitate that, but also make sure that, or put forward an understanding that it doesn't always work because it's a broken world and things are messy. So appreciate your guys' work. I'm curious who else is testifying on this, because I do have a question about one of the logistics on it, and I don't know that you guys would know the details of how the department will implement it.
So DHS.
So I'll save that question.
We'll save it, but DHS is here in order to answer any technical questions. I just wanted to say a couple of things and give the opportunity for the co-chief sponsor to close. I think your example of permanency, and I've been to the last 3 of your biennial conferences, have been very powerful, but the example of the permanency, how we as adults think it's really important, and we judge how quickly we can get you into permanency, and we've been doing actually a very bad job on that with foster youth not finding a permanent home within 3 years. I think we have one of the relatively higher rates of that, and we've been thinking that is so important. And to hear your perspective on how hard it is to be, and I remember one of the main speakers at your conference talking about how he was asked by his foster family would he like to be adopted, and he was so terrified of hurting the feelings of his biological dad, who was trying so hard. And he kept bouncing in and out of that family, but he didn't want to reject his biological dad, but he wanted to remain with his foster family. And because he turned down the adoption, he ended up having to leave that family, and how devastating that was. So understanding the nuances of that and your perspective is so important. So one of the things I would like to ask you to do is to make sure that you submit those 7, I think it was, recommendations to OLIS, so we have that on the record, and continue to talk with us in this, some of the things that you talked about in terms of collaborative problem solving. perhaps could be worked into some of the other bills, in fact, that we're hearing today in terms of training. So there are other ways, even if it's not a whole new bill, that we might be able to incorporate some of those concepts. I just want to also say that you have a batting average of, however you describe that. I don't know, it's 1,000, 100, I don't know what 100%.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
go
I'm not
for
good on the
1,000.
sports analogy, but
Let's do 1,000.
every single bill that you have brought that has arisen and come to the top as the top priorities that you focus. You have a lot of things you want to do. You've put your energy in one or two places every single session, every single time it's passed. From my recollection, four sessions ago, it was college free tuition. The one 2 years later was the Foster Youth Bill of Rights, which this is building on, and that ensured that there were certain things, like if you wanted to get a driver's license or other things, and that was posted, and it was clear that everyone needed to see that. Last year we had two bills. One was, again, building on that, the right to do an activity, and then the second one was the right to have a savings account, and now you're bringing this forward. So I just want to just say, huge kudos to your, and also huge kudos to Children First, who houses and supports the Oregon Youth Foster Connect program. It's really just been phenomenal. You've had profound impact on the hundreds of foster kids in the system that get to benefit from your work. So thank you.
Madam Chair, that's called a home run.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say thank you all for being here. And when I get to meet with you and walk with you and talk with you and laugh with you, it is comforting me to know that my replacement is in place, that you all are taking our jobs in the near future, and we will be much better off for it. So thank you for that. I'm looking forward to you taking on the good fights, as you all have done with every what you just rattled off. Those great, but you did it for yourself. We try to be here to help and to support, but it's your task, and you are up for the task, all of you, and it is amazing and it is inspirational. Again, I look forward to you replacing us. I look forward, you are our legacy, but more important, you're your own legacy, and you are building a great, great, strong one. So I am proud and honored to be associated with you. You know you are welcome, I'm sure, in any of our offices, in any of our homes, at any time, but I look forward to this continued good work and to be a part of it. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much. And now we'll call up DHS. Answer any technical questions. Oh, and also there's Mary Sell. Would you like to come up as well?
Sure. Yes, thank
Yes,
you.
come on up. You could come together.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Mary, I don't know if yours will be any technical.
It's not going to be technical,
Okay.
but just a voice and support.
Okay. Why don't you go first then, and we'll let the technical questions be at the end.
Thank you, Chair Kenny Geyer, Vice Chair Sanchez, Vice Chair Stark, members of the committee. My name is Mary Sell. I am a defense attorney, and I'm also here on behalf of Oregon Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. You've already heard from the most important people in this room, and I just want to commend all of the young people who came here today to support their legislation. OCDLA is here at the table simply as a voice in support of 2216. When we saw this and heard about this, we definitely wanted to make sure that we were here telling you that a huge portion of the membership of OCDLA represent children and parents in dependency cases. I myself have been a juvenile practitioner. I practiced in Douglas County and also in Washington County for close to 4 years before going over to the Public Defender's Office, and then I'm now here in front of you. I represented many children, and I know many of our membership represent juveniles in dependency court. And what we want to be able to do, and what's so important to us, is to be able to walk into court and have something to point to and say, these children have rights to each other. And it is so important, and I know that that's not lost on the members of this committee. Many stories come to mind, but one in particular where I represented a sibling set essentially abandoned by their mother, thrust into the foster system due to the death of their father. The only other person that they had was each other. the only relationship that they had, truly, because there was no family for them to go to. They were ultimately taken in by this amazing, amazing community family. There was a moment in time where one of the children was able to be adopted, or adoption was an option for him, but it wasn't an option for the sister. And they didn't want to leave each other. And we were lucky in that the agency was listening and that the state was listening. But being able to walk into court and point to something such as this Bill of Rights is amazing. And so really all I wanted to do is come here today and say thank you to the sponsors, thank you to this committee for considering this, and OCDLA is in support, and we are asking for your yes votes. So thank you so much today.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, you have a technical?
Oh, yes. So thank you, Chair Koenig-Geyer. Can you share with me what is one of the lines in here is to be provided with transportation and to maintain contact and have visits with sibling. Will you share with me what the current DHS policies are as far as providing transportation for sibling contact? And do you foresee, especially if there's out-of-state cases, an increase in need for funding, specifically around this, due to transportation out-of-state if it's different than what you currently do?
Chair Koenig-Geyer, Representative Stark, Vice Chair Sanchez, members of the committee. Thank you for your question. Currently, we go about transportation in a lot of different ways. We don't have a big bucket of money that we draw
Oh,
from.
I'm sorry. Could you state your name
Oh,
for the
I'm
record?
sorry.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Chair Koenig-Geyer, Vice Chair Sanchez, Stark, members of the committee. My name is Lori Price. I'm Deputy Director for Child Welfare Program here in Oregon. Thank you for your question. Transportation happens in a lot of different ways. We work very closely with our foster families to keep that connection. We're very fortunate with the foster families that we have, that many of them continue to support those relationships when siblings must be separated. Currently, Oregon has the highest percentage of sibling placements in the nation. We're at about 82-83%. That still leaves a good 17-18% of sibling groups that are not together. So when it's not possible to keep sibling groups together, we work with our foster families to arrange for transportation. We work with our caseworkers to arrange for transportation. We work with our SSAs, our social service assistants, to arrange for transportation. It's part of what we do. You threw a little lump in there with the out-of-state. Certainly, if there's an out-of-state sibling group and we're arranging for transportation, there's a cost associated with that, but I would not imagine that would be a fiscal, given the large amount of groups that we already have together and the amazing people that we work with that are willing to help transport and maintain those connections for our youth. So whether it's I'll pick this one up after practice, I'll pick this one up after school, we'll have dinner together on Sunday, we really work with our foster families to help us maintain that sibling connection, and we'll continue to do that in a much stronger way.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. I'm going to
Actually,
I'm sorry.
question. Is there? Thank you. I'm just curious, just because of communication is so darn easy. I can talk to my husband right now, and nobody even knows it, right?
How's he doing?
Or maybe that guy over there with the camera. But communication is so much easier nowadays, and I'm just curious as to why that's such a struggle with foster kiddos. Not seeming to be some kind of block that they can't communicate as well. Even via technology in some way. I'm unclear as to why that's. I mean, I know that it can happen, but I guess I feel like from the stories that I've heard from kiddos that it's sometimes a huge, huge struggle, and I'm wondering what that's about and why we're not implementing some kind of way to make that easier for kids, or communicating with foster parents that should be easier for kiddos.
Sure. Chair Koenig-Geyer, Vice Chair Sanchez, thank you for your question. I agree with you. Technology makes communication very easy. Oftentimes, when siblings are separated, there's a reason now. But I would say that there are other reasons that play a part in that. If we have an extraordinarily large sibling group, we have a foster care shortage, a shortage of foster parents statewide. So if we have a foster family that can take 2 children or 3 children, and there's a 5-children sibling group, that remains a challenge for us, and we're actively trying to address that each and every day. As far as the communication pieces, I would really have to defer to our young people here about some of the barriers around technology, whether it's a restriction of technology in our homes for various reasons. I had the pleasure of spending time with them over the weekend at Willamette University and helping them arrive at these issues. And that's why I think this one is so important, if we can get this on the record. And I think that there are things that we can do. I'm proud of the number of sibling groups that we have together, but I always think we can do better. And as I mentioned, if that leaves 17 or 18% of our sibling groups separated, we need to do a better job of that, of providing for the safety and support of our sibling groups so that they can remain together whenever possible, and providing enough resources statewide that we can accommodate larger groups of siblings. That's certainly one of our biggest challenges right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
If I may add
Yes.
a little bit more before I leave, I do want to mention that we've been working very closely with this young group of folks and an expanded young group of folks in a foster youth advisory committee that we meet with them monthly. We are going through their list of recommendations that came out of their work product, after their summit at Willamette University, and we're trying to work through with them on whether there are issues that need additional legislative changes, or whether there are things that DHS can just do, or whether there are things that we currently do that we could do better or enhance. So just wanted to get that on the record, that they're a great partner with
And
us.
when
in
did
doing
that
this work.
advisory group start?
The advisory group started after the summit this time, right after the leadership change in DHS.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 2216.